Next month, maybe February
22nd.
Okay, all right.
LU?
Yeah, land use
Land use,
case
okay.
22-32.
Good morning. Okay. I call to order the King City Planning Commission meeting at 9:33 on January 25th of 2023. Mr. Weston, roll call, please.
Mr. Bellows, is she online?
No.
Nova, present. Mr. Walters, present. Commissioner Gauthier,
Present.
Meyer, present. Chair Paulson.
Present.
Oh, we're missing, Commissioner Tyso. Tyso, is she online?
Moving on, we have no minutes to approve from previous meetings. And today, we are to consider the following, matter before the Planning Commission, which will be dealt with as a public hearing. The scheduled public hearing is for land use 22-02 Kinder Morgan Pipeline. I will identify the subject, announce when the public hearing is open, and request anyone interested to state their feelings regarding the matter being considered. Failure to raise an issue in person, virtually, or by letter to the Planning Commission or the City Council precludes raising the issue at a subsequent time on appeal. If the Planning Commission decision is appealed, the Council may or may not allow new evidence. You may also name and address any other approval criteria you think apply to this decision. If you wish to speak for, against, or comment in any way, when I call for testimony, please identify yourself as wishing to speak. You may do this by raising your hand, either physically here in the room or digitally, or by typing your name in the chat box. When called to speak, please give your name, address, and make your statement. The maximum time allotted for testimony shall be 3 minutes for individuals, 15 minutes for applicants and persons representing 4 or more persons, and 10 minutes for applicants' rebuttal. If your testimony would be repetitious, but you would like the opportunity to appeal the decision, you must sign the hearing sign-in sheet located at the rear of the council chambers, or type your name in the chat box, or let staff know, and they will type your name in the chat box. Only those who have appeared before the Planning Commission in person, by Zoom, or in writing will be allowed to speak on appeal of this issue at the City Council. Please note that unless there is a continuance of this hearing, if a participant so requests before the conclusion of the hearing, the record shall remain open for at least 7 days after the hearing. If the record remains open, such an extension shall not be subject to the so-called 120-day limit. Okay. I call to order the public hearing regarding case number LU 2202 at 9:36. Do any members of the Planning Commission wish to abstain? Hearing none. Do any of the Planning Commissioners wish to declare a conflict of interest? Hearing none. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter? Anything, Ronnie? Hearing none. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge any individual member of the Planning Commission in this matter? Hearing none. For all those wishing to testify, please be aware that if you fail to raise an issue in person, Zoom, or by letter today or to the Planning Commission, you will be unable to raise that issue at a subsequent item on appeal to the City Council or at a subsequent time on appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the criteria that staff will describe or other criteria in the plan or land use code which you believe apply to the decision. failure to specifically address the approval criteria that staff will describe also precludes the raising of an issue related to these criteria on appeal. Okay, at this time, I call for the staff to present the proposal along with applicable approval standards and make a recommendation.
Morning. This is a relatively simple case, so this will be maybe a refreshing change from previous cases and things are going to be coming up in the next few months. As you indicated, this is for a pipeline to place a pipeline that goes into the Falls River currently. And I know the applicant has a fairly detailed presentation, so I won't go into much of the description of it. On page 2 of the report, map that they provided had a little more labels, but it shows where the work site is proposed to be. It's to the west of the community park within the PGE utility easement area for the power line, for their power line, and then also the DPA right-of-way. DPA right-of-way is not in the city limits, so they are getting permits also from Washington County because this work site is in both jurisdictions. And then in Exhibit A of the report, there's a map that Ben Murray Smith, now Consor, the city engineer, provided when we're needing to make some floodplain amendments to the code and needing to know who to notify, who is affected. But that map still serves well to really show where the floodplain boundary is in this area, so it's just for your information. As far as applicable criteria, there really aren't very many. It's in the ROS and R9 residential zone. Utilities don't really refer to underground facilities, so it is a permissible. It's really a permissible activity. Because utilities are a conditional use, but there is no conditional use because utilities, as we define it, is something above ground. So it wouldn't really apply. Then when we get to landscaping and beautification, really the only requirement is for them to turn the ground to some reasonable level and revegetate it and so forth, but really otherwise nothing else there. But there might be some tree removal necessary, there's not. And then the main code that applies is 16140 relating to floodplain and drainage hazard areas. And for this type of thing, really the main concern is that if you disturb the ground level or you're grading or doing some things, that you put things back as they were, or if anything, remove some material from the floodplain so you don't increase the possibility of flood hazard by putting fill into the floodplain. In this case, they are not. They're going to be obviously working on the site, might have some piles of dirt to the side and so forth while they're working, but at the end, they're starting to put it back as it was. So I've gone through all of the requirements in that section of the code. There are a number of other approvals that they need, and I think the applicant's going to go through all of those for you. They're noted here in the staff report as well. And one other section of the code that is not really part of this proceeding, but will apply to the operation, is we do have Chapter 8.04 nuisances in the municipal code, so they will need to comply with the noise ordinance standards while they're doing their work. We have a recommendation for approval with six recommendations. Most of those are to show that you have permits from the other relevant agencies, such as Division State Land Court engineers and so forth, and that they comply with the Chapter 8.04. So I think that's all I have. The applicant, like I said, will provide more details on exactly what they're doing and how they're doing it. And to answer any questions either now or later.
Yeah, I think I'll wait for the presentation and ask questions.
Okay, at this time, then, we call for the applicant to present their proposal.
Good morning. My name is Tyler Gilligan. I'm a public affairs manager for Kinder Morgan. Also joining me are Andrew Holbrook, Operations Manager, Lane Caravite, Area Operations Manager, and Jim Hopper for Land and Right Away, all for Kinder Morgan. Also joining us is Lauren Duoto from WSP, who's Kinder Morgan's environmental permitting consultant for this project. So just wanted to provide a very brief overview of who we are. Kinder Morgan is one of North America's largest energy infrastructure companies. We have over 83,000 miles of pipelines and 141 terminals throughout the country, transporting natural gas, petroleum products, renewable fuels, and other products. We transport approximately 40% of the natural gas that's consumed in the United States. A lot of people don't know about Kinder Morgan because we don't typically deal with direct to customers. Or consumers, I should say. A lot of our customers are major utilities, fuel distribution companies, et cetera. So we usually describe ourselves as a midstream energy company. So zooming in a little bit to our presence in Oregon, we operate a little over 200 miles of pipelines in the state, the majority of which is our SFPP Oregon system, which we'll be discussing more here shortly, and is the system that this project is related to. We also operate 4 large terminal facilities, 3 in Portland and 1 in Eugene. We're one of the primary suppliers of gasoline and diesel fuel for the state of Oregon, both in the out of our Portland facilities and the Eugene terminal. And we're also the sole supplier of jet fuel to Portland International Airport via our Portland Airport pipeline. So overall, we operate some pretty significant infrastructure that Oregonians rely on for transportation and other needs. And we're always working to ensure the continued efficient and safe operation of our assets here in the state. To go over our Oregon pipeline a bit further, I'll introduce Andrew Holbrook, who's our operations manager for Kinder Morgan.
Thank you. So just to focus a little bit more on what we do here in Oregon, and thank you for the summary, Tyler. So our main asset here is this Santa Fe Pacific Pipeline. It's a 114-mile-long pipeline. It originates in Portland and terminates at our terminal in Eugene. It is the only liquid petroleum terminal in the state of Oregon south of Portland. So it is quite a strategic asset to the state. That terminal serves the geographic area all the way up to the coast, through into central and southern Oregon down to the California border. So that geographic area has about 1.1 million residents in it, and this is their main supply of petroleum products. The pipeline runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's constantly running. We move about 40,000 barrels of product through that per day. A barrel is 42 U.S. gallons. So you're looking at about 1.6 to 1.7 million gallons of petroleum products that move through that. We move three products with 2 grades of gasoline, a regular unleaded gasoline and a premium unleaded gasoline, as well as an ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel that meets the Oregon specification, which just means it has 5% biodiesel added to it before it's injected into the pipeline. So really this pipeline connects 7 major terminals in Portland to the pipeline and then ships it down to the Eugene area. You want me to continue on with the next slide?
No.
Great.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Andrew. So this slide provides an overview of the proposed project we're seeking the floodplain permit for today, our Tualatin HDD project. So Kinder Morgan was conducting an internal inspection of the Oregon pipeline, and we identified some anomalies in a segment of the pipeline under the Tualatin River in King City. We formulated this project to proactively fix those identified anomalies. We're proposing to use the horizontal directional drill, or HDD method, to install a replacement pipeline segment adjacent the current pipeline that goes under the Tualatin River. We're going to, there's a slide next about what the HDD process looks like, so we'll do that in a second. But the HDD we're proposing is approximately 1,350 feet long, and will go about 60 feet below the river in an arc. So it'll minimize any potential environmental impacts to the river, and the new pipeline will be adjacent to the existing one in the same size. It's also an 8-inch diameter, so there's no change in the product being transferred. This is not an expansion. There's really no functional change, except that it will be a new, improved pipeline segment. We're proposing to begin work in the May-June timeframe, and it will last approximately 2 months. There's an extensive permitting process that we'll also be going into here in a moment. I'm going to invite Andrew back up here to give an overview of the HDD process.
So when we say drilling, a lot of people are familiar with, traditional drilling where you're going straight down to drill a water well or some other type of well. So horizontal is just as it implies, it's more or less instead of vertical, it's a horizontal method. So you have a drilling rig. In this particular graphic, you see a drilling rig on the left-hand side of the graphic there. So that is guided by a very sophisticated computer system that uses GPS that keeps it on track where we need it to go as it makes its path below the river and then comes back out on the other side of the river. What we do is we drill that. There's a long drilling stem, and then once that reaches its termination point on the other side of the river, we will pull back that pipe and ream that hole out so that it is the right size to accommodate the pipe that we're going to insert. So in this case, as Tyler said, we have an 8-inch pipe that we're going to be putting back in, same size as what's already in service. Once that reamer pulls back all the way back to the left side to the drill rig, then we will pull the pipe also after that. So the pipe is inserted in one long run, and amazingly enough, the steel is fairly flexible. It will bend enough to make that curve and then come out the other side. So it's a continuous pull process. That's really probably the most time-sensitive part of the project is getting all of that 1,350 feet pipe connected before we begin that process of pulling it through that hole. So next slide, please. Okay, so I think that's, you're up on this?
Yep.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So I believe the map's already in your project materials, but just in case, I wanted to kind of give an overview of the location. So the proposed HDD segment is, like I said, adjacent to the existing pipeline in the power line right away, where the high power lines cross the river, west of Southwest Cordelia Terrace and the community park right near the banks of the Tualatin. The entry and exit points for the HDD are indicated with the blue boxes on either side of the river. Like was mentioned previously, this is in the power line right away, so there is no tree impacts. It's already a clear-cut area. Next slide, please. And then next slide. That's just the same map. So as noted in the agenda, we're requesting a planning commission approval of our floodplain permit. The staff report issued on the 18th recommended issuance of a permit, and just again, we appreciate all of Keith's and the city's work on this matter. I'm now going to introduce Lauren Duoto to discuss the permitting process for this project.
So these are a couple of the permits that we've either had completed or in progress. So we've been working on this extensive permitting process for a few months now. So right now, what we completed is we do have a land use compatibility statement for King City that has been signed. We also have a section of the JPA, which is the joint permit application that has been signed by Metro, which is on the problem. We have worked with Oregon State Department, Oregon DSL, and they have determined that no permit is required. We have met with all these agencies as well. It's same with the Department of Environmental Quality. No 401 certification will be needed. We're not having any listed. And we've had consultation with them, which is conducted through the court. So they've started that process and they've resolved. In Washington County, they also have received the letter. So right now, what's in progress is we're still continuing that core permit with the nationwide permit rules. Washington County will be submitting a drain permit application. And Clean Water Services, we're currently working on the 1,200 feet in permit and erosion control plan. And the court is also helping us initiate ship out for preservation.
Thank you, Lauren. Next slide. So just wanted to go over, we had discussed with Keith about I wanted to give an overview of just some of the logistics for construction here. So we're kind of looking at a 6-day-a-week time frame for construction, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. There will be occasional isolated tasks after hours, because there's some tasks that take several hours that will, once you start, you can't stop. You need to complete them, such as testing. So there'll be a few exceptions there. We'll have construction signage that is, I believe it's detailed in the permitting documents we required. We'll be installing timber mat road along the power line corridor from our access point, just to minimize any ground disturbance from heavy equipment. And as noted in some of the conditions for the staff approval, prior to construction, we'll be providing notifications both to the city as well as the residents that are adjacent the project location. And as part of that, we'll be providing a company representative who residents can get in touch with at any point during the construction process if they have questions or concerns. And we'll just be keeping lines of communication open. Next slide, please. For environmental protections, we will be setting up erosion mitigation measures prior to work, and those will be maintained throughout construction. We'll be inspecting after any rain events for any changes, and dust control and mitigation will be implemented. We did want to note that for the noise ordinance, we are aware of the noise ordinance limitations here in the city, and we're currently working with a third-party noise consultant to identify and evaluate the noise-sensitive areas and the mitigation options we have for the various equipment to limit those noise levels for the adjacent residents. Also wanted to note for the recreation areas, one of the sites is immediately west of the community park, and I believe we're planning right now on utilizing a portion of the parking lot that's nearest the power line corridor. It's like a gravel parking area. So we will be providing additional temporary parking on the other side of the power line tower, so it would be north of that location, so that there's no reduction in parking for people going to the park. There will be some trail closures, and those will be indicated with signage with recommended detours wherever possible, basically between the parking lot and the river, where that likely will be. Next slide. And then post-construction, we'll be restoring to pre-construction contours and seeding the area. As requested by the city, the existing soil berm that's between the parking area and the pipeline right-of-way, the power line utility right-of-way, will be graded down because there is kind of like a awkward berm like in portions right there. So we'll try to level that out and improve that upon completion. There'll be cathodic protection stations placed as needed, and I might have to put up some new pipeline markers and signage. There's already several out there right up to the banks of the river, as well as one of the sign flyovers, the numbers that you probably see if you've ever been down to that location. And then we'll be providing the as-built plat to the City of King City and any additional documentation that's necessary. And that was really all the key points of the project that we wanted to provide. Again, thank you to the city staff and to the commission for the opportunity to give you guys an overview of what we think is a really important project. And we're happy to take any questions or comments.
Does anyone wish to provide neutral comments about this project? Hearing none.
I have a question.
I think we come to that up a little bit further. Does any member of the audience wish to speak in favor of this application? Hearing none. Does any member of the audience wish to speak in opposition of this application? Approach the podium. And go ahead and state your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Gary Mitchell. I live 13350 Southwest King Lear Way, which is the corner of Fisher Road and King Lear. My comments concern noise and heavy vehicles along Fisher Road. during construction of this project. It's not necessarily in opposition, but I would like the planning commission to carefully consider the impact on the neighborhood and the impact on city streets of heavy vehicles that could be going back and forth constantly during the construction process. And to ensure that residents are protected, children are protected, and that undue damage and noise is not a constant during the process. Those would be my considerations for you all. Do I need to sign in here?
Yes.
Okay. I do have one question. Will there be time for public comment, not on this subject, but on other subjects that we could bring up? No.
Not at this public hearing.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Do you want to have the applicant speak to mitigation of access to those?
And you go through, proponent, and then you give an opportunity for opponent,
Okay.
and then give the applicant an opportunity to rebut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If anybody on the commission has questions.
Is this the time for them to give the rebuttal since there's an opposition? I mean,
Yeah, there's no
commentary.
other opposition, any proponent,
Okay.
that want to speak, and then
Proponents already.
the applicant.
You did neutral comments, yeah. Okay, you guys want to speak to accessing the site through our neighborhoods?
Yeah, as mentioned previously, we are very aware of, the high-density, residential area that's immediately adjacent to the construction area, so that is going to be a key focus, just to minimize, any sort of noise. Naturally, there is noise associated with this kind of work, for an HDD flow, but we will be identifying any ways possible to mitigate that. As far as, the construction access, this is a relatively small HDD for a pipeline project as far as that type of project goes. And once the entry and exit points are established and the equipment is in place, the day-to-day traffic really wouldn't be at the level, I think it's fair to say that you would see it like a large construction project, like for a condo building or a home or something like that. The day-to-day while the work is occurring is relatively small. And again, we're happy to do any additional mitigation that the city requires as far as roadways, et cetera.
To essentially move in, it stays there until you're done and then you move out.
Yeah, I mean, there's people going to and from the site day to day, but,
Yeah, and if I could just add to that a little bit, and that's the point, really, the main piece of equipment is the drilling rig. So once that drilling rig is brought in, put on site, that's not gonna be going back and forth, that's gonna stay in position. So most of the traffic will be, most of the other equipment is gonna be on the opposite side of the river, where the pipeline is going to be assembled, welded together, so that's gonna have a lot more activity on that opposite side of the river than you will. They're fairly minimal, like I said, I think the first few days will get set up, you'll see through. After that, it should be mostly vehicle pickup.
Great, let's open it up for planning commissioner comments and questions.
Yes, I have a question which has to do with the traffic access. Are you thinking of using both the east and west side road access to access the site? Both the eastern side and the western side, which is 37th and via Fisher Road?
I believe as of right now, we only have the one, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so we,
As of right now, I believe we only have the one designated entry point.
Which is the one, which is in along, that's 137.
Correct, yeah. And I think that's indicated on the maps you provided. If it's not, yes, that.
it's on the map.
So that's the only one, as of right now, that we identified as being our entrance point, and that's what we're gonna put the timber maps to.
Then it really won't come through the Fisher Road, Edgewater neighborhood at all, unless you access that point for like daily pickups or worker back and forth.
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
And then the second question I have for you, Azita, you showed a timeline of a 2-month construction timeline. Is that include the site like mobilization, construction site and the demobilization piece, or just a?
If everything goes according to plan, that should be, mobilization, actual construction and drilling, and, demobilization. The only thing that I would say probably wouldn't be in that time frame is some of the mitigation efforts, which sometimes is, Laura has anything to add, but, some of the replanting of the grass and whatnot can take a little bit longer.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a few questions. You might want to just stand there. We represent, the community. So, questions like Gary's come up regarding noise and whatnot. We're going to be fielding some of those, I think. I get all kinds of questions regarding trees and whatnot. So, as far as the noise goes, I looked up King City Municipal Code 9.12.050, which is different than the one that you referred to, Chapter 8. But it talks about construction impacts and the noise being limited to, I believe, it was 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. So does that differ from the Chapter 8 noise code? Keith or Mike?
Not an expert on that, but I think it might. I mean, it might be a little different. I thought it was 7 to 7 in the noise code.
7 to 6 in that chapter.
For the construction?
For construction, right. Now, we're also dealing with unincorporated Washington County to the west side. So you're probably dealing with two different codes then. You're dealing with Washington County noise code as well as King City noise code. And I know there are construction limits. From what I remember, Sunday is a day off, right? I think that it is allowed 6 days a week. But I think that, 7 to 7 is a pretty elongated period of time, 6 days a week. I know that across the river in the Heritage Pine Natural Area, they were recently doing some work, and everybody in the area could hear it. And they were going past their allotted time. They had like a cutoff time of 6, and there were times when they were going to 7 and later. So I want to ensure that, for the community's sake, is that when you have a posted time, that those times are followed. And I think that Washington County ordinance, as well as, kind of working out the inconsistency in the King City ordinance, that those times are followed.
Yeah.
And that it shouldn't include, I might add, lining up equipment at 5 o'clock in the morning to start the drill at 6 a.m.
Yep.
Or whatever time it was, 6 a.m. So that's a concern that I think that needs to be addressed from the community standpoint. And I just have some kind of technical questions. Just I know that I'll get some questions regarding the pipeline drilling and whatnot. So I'm assuming that the flow will never be shut off during this drilling time, that your equipment is precise enough that you're not going to. So what would be that distance between pipelines, the one you're replacing versus the one that you're adding? Also, if you're drilling an 8-inch hole, I would imagine at 60 feet you're not getting into bedrock, correct? That it's probably not bedrock at all. So when you're drilling this, is there a slurry that's involved? Are you adding water to your drilling process to where it's a concern for any kind of flow into drainage areas or into the river itself? So that's a question I have. How much material do you remove? I know that Washington County has a limit on 50 cubic yards before the grading permit is needed. I thought I saw where in the application one wasn't needed, but I see that the grading permit is in process with Washington County. So I'm wondering if you'll be exceeding that 50 cubic yards and what you do with that 50 cubic yards. I'm assuming that you're trucking it off-site. And that's not a whole lot. It's like 5 dump truckloads, right? So I don't anticipate a whole bunch of dump trucks running in and out of the area. So what else here? Signage. You mentioned signage. Will there be a phone number posted on that signage? If anybody has a question, they can call. You talked about, sending out notification to area residents. How far does that notification go out? Is it a mile? Is it, what's that distance? And it's just not King City. It's also unincorporated Washington County residents too, as you know that there's a development over onto the west side of the area. you mentioned noise mitigation. I'd kind of like to know what mitigation techniques you would use to reduce the noise of a drill, and how noisy are these drills? Again, it's a prolonged period of time, every day, 6 days a week for 2 months during the summertime when people are outside and enjoying the river and the park and whatnot. So I'm kind of curious what kind of noise we're looking at, what you can do to reduce that noise level. And you're dealing with a lot of different agencies, I'm sure, with DEQ. I saw your joint application with multiple agencies, Army Corps of Engineers and whatnot. I'm sure that there will be some sort of oversight on the site, as far as any kind of slurry activities. I kind of like to know, who will be on site, what government agency will be kind of monitoring the site. And bear with me, I just have a couple more things here. I'll get a couple of things here. Sorry. I saw your joint application with multiple agencies. I just was kind of curious about something. In the permit, you marked yes to are there state or federally listed species on the project site, and you also marked yes on is the project site within designated or proposed critical habitat. In your summary, you addressed one of them. I believe it was salmonids. Is that how you say that? But I'm curious, which federally listed species and critical habitat you're referring to when you marked yes. What were you responding to on that? And that's it.
Okay, I think I got it all, but Matt asked for, make sure I'm getting it all. Distance, you might know some of this a little better than me. So distance between existing pipelines.
So typically we have a 20-foot easement that we operate in throughout most areas. And so we want to have the existing pipeline, center line is that, so you'll have a 10-foot center line of pipe. So we'll be within that 10-foot of either side of the existing pipeline. The pipeline segment that is currently under the river will continue to operate, obviously has to be able to supply the energy needs of the state of Oregon. They will be shut down at the point where the new drill pipe has been put in and we're ready to connect it to the portion of the line. That typically will take 24 to 36 hours to do that. Other than that, that will really be the only time the system will be taken out of service to be purged. Obviously, remove the fuel on this segment to be able to do that. And so that, I think, operationally was your question on that. As far as grading, the grading typically refers to material that is removed from the surface. So this is something that is going to be drilled and removed from the subsurface, and there will be typically a lubricating drilling fluid used, is typically which is nice slippery, helps the drill bit to move through the subsurface a lot easier. That will be collected and removed from the site via vacuum trucks or other devices. So there will be no material left on site for any extensive period. That's a typical method that's used for the drilling operation.
On the noise and construction activities, that's what we're working right now with our sound consultant on the specific mitigation measures, as well as with the sound survey that they completed, because obviously everywhere is acoustically different, and sometimes if you can't just cookie cutter, the types of sound mitigation you use, because there's geography, maybe, for example, a sound wall is one method that we use in many locations when we're doing this type of work, but you have to be careful about placement because you could just redirect the sound elsewhere. So that's the kind of things we're working with a consultant on right now to specifically identify what would work for this location with the limits in mind.
For this location, you've got the Tualatin River, and things really echo through that Tualatin River Valley, too. So,
yeah. It's a clear undercut, utility corridor.
So doing an on-site evaluation would be really important.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
One other thing, you mentioned an anomaly, in the pipe. Can you kind of explain what that anomaly was?
Anomaly is a very generic term, so
That's why I asked.
what we do is on a regular basis, we run what's called a smart tool through the pipeline. It runs with the product, and it's an electronic device that is used to measure a number of things, the thickness of the steel in the pipe, it's looking at the welds, it's looking for any dents or deformities in the pipe. Sometimes people will dig around a pipeline and not make a one call, and they hit the line and don't tell anybody. So that's one of our concerns. That's one of the things. Also looks for any potential development of microcrack steel. And so an anomaly could be any of those things. Typically, the most common thing is, as the pipeline ages in certain environments, is external corrosion. The pipeline is wrapped, it is covered with a corrosive protective material. It's typically a sort of a plastic wrap that adheres to the pipeline. We also have a cathodic protection system that impresses a current on the pipeline to much anode in a hot water heater from being eroded. But over time, you may get some erosion of the thickness of the steel in the pipe. And so typically that's what we find in many of these cases is we're seeing a particular spot where the wall thickness is starting to reduce over time. We project that out as, where do we get to a safe limit at where that, and we want to replace that section of pipe before we get to that point. Much like doing maintenance on a car or an airplane. So it's part of just a normal operations preventative program that we do. So the anomaly again is typically corrosion related.
And I'll try to address some of the other items. So as far as signage, that is a good point. We can include a phone number in addition to the notification and the mailing that we'll be giving to the residents. And that is something I was planning on working with the city, and you can tell me who would be best to do that, to identify what you think the radius should be. We typically do a couple blocks, and I know Jim has been in the area talking to residents. But we're happy to expand that, to get the information to as many people, or if you prefer to be on the website, or we're very flexible with notification.
Well, I think my recommendation would be as far as the noise can be heard. Oftentimes, on Nextdoor is a famous place for people to get on and complain about things. And you often hear, where's that noise coming from?
Right.
So, if you can kind of project out on that would be probably beneficial. Or people say, I never got a notice in the mail, which I hear quite often too.
Oh, yeah. So, absolutely. And then we can include that information on signage. We can resolution that works, definitely. I don't know if, Lauren, are you able to speak to the protected on there?
So, the species that you guys are seeing is the coho salmon, so it's within the Tualatin. We did do biological surveys in wetlands, but there's no other species out there because it is.
Do you have all your questions answered?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Mike?
I just wanted to make one brief statement. There's two sections of the code that talk about noise. One was section 912.050, subsection B, which was adopted by ordinance in 1990, by ordinance 90-03. And there's another dealing directly with noise. And to Commissioner Meyer's point, that does say 7 to 6. Then in 1995, with ordinance 95-02, which addresses noise under section 8-04-130, it says 7 to 7. So 95, the ordinance that was passed in 1995, for some reason didn't back and address section 9, which was passed in 1990.
So does section 8 specifically mention construction? Because it does in 9.
Yeah, that's what he just showed me.
Okay,
So I think it's just, they haven't crossed off, and.
so now we know about it.
Now we need to go back and.
And decide whether or not you want it 6 or 7. And I think from a resident standpoint, probably 6, but something to consider.
And then, my only other question was, you mentioned that the gas pipeline carries gasoline and diesel and other things. Do you do that down the same pipe, or do you use different pipes?
Yeah, it carries gasoline and diesel, and it's just 2 grades of gasoline, but it does all go through the same pipeline. And so, the products really butt up against each other. There's nothing in between them. What keeps them from commingling, is just the pressure in the line, the liquid pressure.
Wow.
So as they come down the line. Yeah. Now, when we get to the end of the line at the terminal in Eugene, there is a very small portion where the 2 butt up against each other that has commingled as it's traveled that 114 miles down the pipeline. And so we'll take that out, and that gets separated into a separate system. We call that transmix. It's mixed in transportation. So that is typically taken back to the refinery and is reprocessed. It's a very small, very fraction of a percent where that's transmitted.
Don't buy your gas in Eugene.
Well, I will say that the majority of the product that comes into Portland from the 4 refineries in Washington State, which is where the majority of the product for Oregon comes from, comes down the Olympic pipeline system. So a lot of that is using the same technology. You may not, obviously, it's there.
Does viscosity help separate it out too, or is it just strictly pressure?
It's strictly pressure.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Upwards of 1,440 pounds per square inch of pressure.
You have a question, Jeff?
One more comment on the noise part. So section 8.04 just covers noise generally from any source for any particular reason.
So it doesn't mention construction then?
No, but it would.
Encompass it.
Umbrella, just
Right.
whatever you're doing, you can't do any more than this one. More general one. So, yeah, I think that when they adopted 804, they weren't looking at 9 something, because you probably would have just gotten rid of that and it's overlaps and that 1 hour difference. So.
Just out of curiosity, that I'm new to the planning commission, would something like noise ordinance be something under the purview of the planning commission? It would it not? So I don't want to be, stepping outside the boundaries here, but.
It's a legislative matter, so you'd still be, it's considered like a type 4 legislative matter. So it would still be, planning commission would review, make recommendations, and the recommendation would go to the council. And it's been a long time, probably since 99, 2000, since we've done a code review. Well, we did partial code reviews here and there to make sure that we're in compliance with state and federal laws. But typically what happens in those situations is you're focused on just one spot. So sometimes there's other portions of the municipal code that get missed or forgotten about in adopting the new one, and it doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily capture all. So what we kind of need to do is go through and do like a code audit in the near future and address.
Question?
Yeah, I think I have one, and that relates to, what kind of measures will be implemented when you guys are getting ready to connect the old to the new? Are there chances of spills?
Well, anytime you open a system, you want to be prepared for that potential. We do close the, what we call block valve on either section of the area where we're going to be cutting open the pipe and making a connection. We run another type of device. We would call these things pigs for lack of an elegant term, but smart pigs are the tools we use to scan for anomalies. But we have cleaning pigs and we have isolation pigs that we use. So we'll be putting a nitrogen gas into the pipeline in between these pigs, and that nitrogen gas will purge the liquid product out of the section of line that we are going to be opening to make those connections. So at that point, there is technically no liquid product left in the line. It's inert nitrogen gas, which allows us to safe place. There's nothing that will explode at that point. That's why we use nitrogen. It's very inert. But we will have spill containment around that area. We'll have vacuum trucks on site, in case there is any liquid, perhaps that did not get purged from the line, and then the vacuum trucks will remove that. Typically, there is no liquid left in the line, when we do the nitrogen.
Speaking about pressure and product and those sort of things, I had a question regarding the use of a pressure relief valve on this pipeline. I know the city of Wilsonville has like a pressure relief valve, I believe, and I'm wondering what the purpose of that would be, or why it would be important on a system such as this.
Relief valves are really something that does not exist all the way along a liquid pipeline. It does in many cases in natural gas, because gas can expand. So we do have pressure relief devices at our pump stations and at our terminals that relieve pressure on the line. When we're operating the line, we have a lot of telemetry that we're constantly looking at. We have sophisticated computer systems, a SCADA system. So we're constantly looking at telemetry. We're looking at flow rates. We're looking at volumetric differences between what out of the pipeline. We're looking at pressures, temperatures, all those sorts of things. Analyzing that stuff many times per second. And any sort of differentiation in that, that goes beyond an upper or lower control limit that's established, the controller gets an alarm and evaluate. But typically, the pressures are kept constant by the pumps that are running the system, that are pumping the product down the line. And so we start at our pump station in Portland, where the 7 terminals connect and feed into the one pipeline, and then we have a booster station in Salem that then pushes that product to Eugene. Typically, you're starting at the highest pressure point where the pump is, and as you continue down the line, you're starting to gradually lose pressure just because of the weight of the product. You've got some frictional resistance as the product goes through the pipeline against the wall of the pipe, and then that's why you have to boost it. So the pressure is constantly getting less and less as you go further downstream down the pipe.
So for our purposes, for our area, most of the pressure is coming from Portland and shooting down towards Salem. So, so then the purpose for a pressure relief would be in case of some sort of emergency within the line or something like that, or you really wouldn't need one.
Yeah, it really is not. The system is not designed to need a pressure relief further down the line. You do have, again, a lot of people see these pressure relief pipes that come out of the gas pipeline, and that can, you can get some natural gas emanating from those pressure reliefs. You don't want to have that in a liquid system for all sorts of environmental and safety concerns. That's why we're constantly looking at the telemetry, the pressures all the way along the pipeline at many different points. How we're running.
Where's the nearest look on ours? Is it on the south side there in that the gas monitoring?
As far as the telemetry, some of our telemetry for the pressure.
For our
we have one.
Yeah, so north, there's a block valve. So I think what you're referring to when you're speaking in Wilson, those block valves.
Yeah.
So these are block valves. They're basically just shut off valves in case of emergency. And that's, we'll push a pig in from Portland. It'll go past that block valve. We'll close the valve behind it. And now you've got pure nitrogen, and you push out the product, and then you close the valve downstream, and you've got a section of pipe that's all nitrogen. There will be a pressure relief during the blowdown process of the nitrogen. So now you're packed with nitrogen, and you blow that down. Basically, go full of air and be able to cut the pipe and weld it in pipe in that process. There will be a pressure relief, a nitrogen pressure relief, and a blowdown. So that's it. Other than that, you're valves, and those are there in case of emergency or something like that. We can close, and the reason they're in proximity to the river is to protect the river.
And there's one on the north side, you said?
Yeah, right by Bend Road.
Okay. And then on the south side?
South side is going to be Wilsonville. Yeah. Close to north Wilsonville.
They build their own pipeline now.
Yeah.
No, we haven't.
We want to give out too many of the trade secrets.
Right.
I have a question. How close to the river will you be drilling? It's kind of a beloved recreation area, and we have a primitive dock and river access at that point. Is there any impact on that facility?
We are, I'm not sure the exact footage, we're back,
It's back from the cliff, though, pretty far.
Fairly far,
Okay.
far back.
It's, kind of huge, so there's the park, and then directly across is the, like gravel parking area. The drill site is like right there.
Okay.
By the power line, so, I was just there right before this meeting, and yeah, it's
Our dog park.
probably a couple hundred feet, yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Nice German Shepherd while we're out there this
Yeah.
morning,
Okay.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you're down at the river's edge, or you're boating at the dock, right, you won't have any sense that anything is occurring, you won't feel anything, hopefully we'll get, the noise mitigation, you won't hear anything, there'll be no awareness that there is any drilling going on.
Quite far back.
Yeah, it'll be very deep below.
Chair Colson, along that same thing, we're doing the planning for the West Side Trail segment, and we're looking at improving that river access, which would be doing a removal of material there and kind of laying that down so it's more accessible. What kind of impact do you think that would have on your pipeline, removing some of the material along that bank and shoring it up?
Definitely would have some impact, depending on the depth of cover, where, although the new pipeline's gonna be much deeper under the river, whereas the old pipeline, was trench cut through the river, so much shallower, so I would think this would be better for that.
So you're 60 feet on the depth for this new pipeline, what kind of cover do you need then? Because I don't see you going down more than 15 feet, right, at the most? Because that's about, the height of the bank is probably 10.
Yeah, so I think it might be a little bit higher at that location because of how low the river drops in summertime.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not the expert yet, and we haven't finished the designs, because we're just starting them with the RFFA grant that we just got.
So how much cover do you need?
Well, you would have plenty of cover, none of that would have any impact on it with the new system. With the old system, yes, it would.
So thanks for doing that then, that helps us with that.
Yeah. Good timing.
He just saved you about $5 million.
Great.
Yeah, so my concern is if we started a construction project down there to get river access for people to drop their kayaks into the river, that we would hit your pipeline, so.
Yeah, no, you should have no issues with the new alignment, the new piece of.
But the surface area is so far back from where there would be mitigation. Yeah.
I just had one more comment. I have always wondered how gasoline gets further down into Oregon. And I always assumed it would be a pipeline. I always assumed that it would be a pipeline from the refineries in Seattle down to Portland, because we don't seem to have any refineries here. And it's just always been an interesting thought to me. We got all these different gas lanes in a pipeline. You say there's two different types. There's a class 1 or type 1 fuel and a type 2.
It's just based on octane rating, so a regular and premium octane really.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, so then it's strictly a marketing thing here. Why Chevron is charging almost $5 a gallon for their gas, you don't have to worry. And then you go right down the street here to our Astro Gas, and it's at $3.25. And it's just a marketing thing about quality of gasoline, and
It's the additive.
Yeah,
It's their additive package. Their proprietary
They change it.
additive package.
Yeah, so the gasoline, you're right, essentially it is all fungible, there is no one molecule of the gasoline that is identifiable with any one company. It's when the additive is put in, and that is put in when the truck loads the gasoline at the terminal before it goes out to the retail station, that's where the additive is added. But Chevron, since you brought them up, has always had a very good additive package. It's very highly rated. They use, I think, 4 times the minimum required rates that the EPA requires for detergent additives and other things. So it is a more expensive additive that they use, whether it's, for that difference that you talked about to put it in, I don't know. But there is a minimum requirement, federal minimum requirement by the EPA for detergent additive that all additives have to meet. So the argument is about, our additive is better than your additive based on these components or the strength of it.
Like RC Cola versus Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
There's a pipeline for that too, huh?
Probably somewhere, yeah.
And then, my last little comment is, thank you guys for being proactive and realizing that your existing pipeline, needs some mama loving before we have some kind of catastrophe under the river. So, thank you again for being proactive and on top of the game.
We appreciate that comment. That's definitely the goal here, is we want to address issues early.
Any other comments from the commission? Okay, then hearing none, I'd like to ask for a motion to close or continue the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Call for discussion? And roll call
Closing?
on closing the,
All right.
on the, closing the
And
public hearing.
Commissioner Meyer, who seconded, right?
Correct?
All right. Commissioner Casanova? Aye. Got it. Yea or nay?
Oh,
for
Yeah, to
closing?
close.
Yeah.
Walter?
Okay.
Commissioner Meyer?
Just where we make sure that the conditions are met regarding, I mean, they said that they're gonna put up signage and, check decibel levels and whatnot.
Deliberate and make a motion next.
Okay, this is not,
Close,
okay,
yep.
okay, I have to close. Okay.
Chair Paul?
Yes. Okay, I think that is unanimous, and so I declare this public hearing closed on January 25th at 2023. Then the next section, what is the pleasure of the Planning Commission? Do you wish to approve with conditions, or deny the application? And,
Meyer, you're off.
this is your opportunity to have discussion. Can you say that again?
Approve with conditions.
Approve with conditions. Do you want to detail what those conditions are, or?
Conditions were making sure that there's adequate signage that indicates a phone number and contact on that signage for residents to call if they have concerns. And secondly, regarding the noise, that an attempt is made to reduce the decibel levels for the drilling rig. And I'd like to assign a number to that, but I can't because I'm not a noise engineer, but something that is deemed adequate, I guess. Surrounding communities.
Is there any further discussion by other planning commissioners regarding these conditions?
And one more.
Oh, go ahead.
That would be the mailer, that it gets mailed out to a geographic area that would be impacted by any such noise. And I guess that would be part of that noise study to determine how far that noise would go, and then that would be the limit of your notification.
Okay, at this time, any discussion regarding these additional conditions for approval of the applicant?
Just think about the mail, and the mail is not just about mail, but anyone that actually gets impacted. Other sort of construction vehicles, so if we have access, the 137, they may not hear it right in the front there, but they should still be notified.
So I'm trying to put a number on it just so I understand. So if we went the corridor itself, typically we do a 250-foot notice from the boundary of the affected area. That's going to hit everybody along 137th and everybody along the west side of, east side as well as the west side of that corridor where they're working.
I mean, I think that's adequate, to be honest.
I think that's fair. Maybe that row of houses right along the park as well.
They would hit those,
Yeah.
you do 250
Mm-hmm.
feet from the boundary, the corridor.
I would personally think that 250 feet is not enough.
Right.
Because noise travels, and it's more of an impact, especially along the 12th River. So I understand 250 feet is probably good for most things, but when you have a drilling rig like the one that's over off of Roy Rogers Road, that's putting the pipeline in underneath the 12th River down there, I can hear that, from where I live. It's not to the point where it's, maddening, but, I would probably want to expand that beyond 250 feet myself.
I mean, yeah, about the noise, because like I can hear Edgewater's, maintenance crew from my neighborhood, and I'm more than 250 feet from where they're working.
The struggle is our code says 250 feet, so we can ask the applicant if they're willing, we can make the requirement 250 feet and ask the applicant if they're willing to go out a little more. I don't know if we have the authority to go beyond our code.
So another code review, maybe, for noise.
Adequate signage and notice, minimum 250 feet, preferably where we're affecting. And then, attempt to reduce the decibel numbers of the drilling machine.
And provision of a phone number on the signage or other notification.
Seem reasonable to everybody?
Any further discussion regarding those conditions, or whether we should approve or deny the application at this time?
Motion to approve. We didn't get a second though.
Motion to approve with conditions.
Need a second by Mr. Casanova. And then, okay, so then we will have a roll call vote to approve with conditions.
The conditions that were listed prior. So, three conditions, motion by Commissioner Meyer to approve with condition, three conditions: adequate signage and notice, 250-foot minimum, from the corridor, attempt to reduce decibel numbers for the noise study, and, phone number on the signage is mailed out. I have a second from Commissioner Casanova.
Correct.
Roll call vote.
Please.
Commissioner Walters.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Casanova.
Yes.
Chair Paulson.
Yes. We have unanimously approved the application with conditions.
So we'll have a total of 9 then.
9 conditions.
We have 6 now.
Uh-huh.
So these can be added, there'll be signage on the site, mailer. And the compliance of chapter 804.
Okay. When the decision notice has been mailed out, you have 14 days to appeal the decision to the city council. You must file an application stating the grounds for your appeal to the city recorder and pay the application fee of $250 at 15300 Southwest 116th Avenue, King City, Oregon 97224. The decision notice is normally mailed within 1 week following the decision.
For coming by.
Thank you so much.
Very much.
And then we are moving forward with our meeting. Our next agenda item is going to be our staff report on upcoming projects.
There, 1 second.
No problem.
So I mailed out to the planning commission a list of dates that you saved on your calendar. Those were for, first the transportation system plan, and then the master plan following that. There's going to be some additional code work and methodologies that need to occur after everything is adopted, or they're kind of occurring simultaneously, but they'll follow. Those are your system development charge methodologies, and then the code updates with our municipal code and development code. So looking ahead at the timeline, I'm trying to plan for a full day, at least one full day for each particular one, and I'm booking out 2 additional if necessary. So when we look at the transportation system plan, that should be coming to the planning commission in March, and we're starting on March 23rd, that Wednesday. I'm sorry, starts on the 22nd. March 22nd is Wednesday. So March 22nd was a Wednesday, and then I have also the 23rd and 24th if necessary. So that's 3 days. I don't think we're gonna need all 3 days. I think we could probably get through everybody on day 1, and then maybe use day 2 for deliberation and make a recommendation to the city council. That's for the transportation system plan. There's the potential that we do get through it in 1 day, but I'm not sure if that's feasible or not. That's why I booked them all out. So, transportation system plan in March. We have the master plan in April, so that would be April 26th. And then I also put, I just planned on 3 days for that, just to be safe, so that'd be April 26th, 27th, and 28th.
And what do you think time-wise, what is a day in your mind?
9 to 5.
9 to 5, okay.
Break for lunch, or 9 to 5 break for lunch. And only if it's necessary to go that long. Hopefully, we can get through testimony. Usually testimony is limited to 3 minutes a person. They can submit written testimony that fall on the record. To progress faster, it's just gonna depend on how quickly we get through everything.
And this will be recorded? Will it be recorded?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it'll be just like today where it's hybrid. There'll be the 3-minute public testimony period. It'll be a public hearing. Proponent, opponent.
So Mike, one of the things that we've talked about, and we talked about it at the last workshop, Jamie mentioned it, and I mentioned it, is having an opportunity for a workshop. Are we not going to have an opportunity for a workshop, say, in February? Or have we, when I say we, not me, determined that a workshop is not necessary?
Workshop on the
TSP
TSP.
And the master plan in general, just to have an opportunity for planning commissioners, councilors to talk about and ask questions themselves about the studies that were done and the draft TSP. Do we feel that that's not necessary as a body to deliberate and discuss prior to public hearings? I mean, it's something that we've talked about and brought up, and Jamie brought it up herself during the last workshop.
Open to the public. Then it would be just on what's out right now. So right now, the draft TSP is up on the TSP website, and the master plan is up on the master plan website. And actually, I think the TSP is also on the master plan.
And so we've also had presentations from the consultants after each SAC and TAC round, right? And this time we did not. So we just completed SAC and TAC 5.
Yeah.
No presentation to planning commission or council as planned.
Yeah.
We have February open where we don't have anything going on in terms of the planning commission meeting. So it would be my recommendation to have an opportunity for the planning commission to meet and to voice any concerns or any questions or anything at all, so we have a chance to discuss, rather than just listening to a consultant presentation.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So we might have staff shortages on trying to get a work session in. Keith is out of town, in early March, late February. We could potentially see if DKS can come in to answer questions for a workshop on February
15th,
February 15th.
and then anytime in March.
February 22nd would be the real,
Right. That would be
and you're out.
I just feel like it's important for us to have a really solid understanding of everything and can voice any concerns, and that we have a good feel for it ourselves before we go into a public hearing process, where we're going to hear lots of different comments and whatnot, and be able to, identify valid concerns versus maybe some that aren't so valid. So I think it's a very important step.
Do we have time?
I believe that having the workshop will be, really beneficial, and sort of save you time in the March and the April meetings.
Especially if we're going to be making a recommendation. I think it's better to go in full knowledge and educated, rather than maybe not.
So you want to try to, because Keith would leave, he won't be here the week of February 22nd, and the regular meeting would be.
Can we move it up to the 15th?
We could potentially do the 15th if the council's, or commission's open for that.
I'm not sure that weekend.
Or
Weekend of the
What
15th,
about-
I'm not sure.
The following week, the 1st of, wait, hold on,
You mean
the 1st of March.
he's gonna be
He's
out
out.
of town.
You're still gone? But
March work.
you're around?
Yes,
Really?
I'm gone for like 10 days, but it's just.
Sure.
Beginning of March would work for me, I'm good.
What's that?
Beginning of March.
Like
start
March
of
1st, instead of having our plans.
The trick with this is going to be, if you do a work session on March 1st, post notice and everything for the TSC's already out. Got to be on the street. Before that, we can't change.
I wouldn't foresee any reason to change the public hearing.
No, but it's,
Is that what you're alluding to? Changing the public hearing date?
In the material,
Yeah.
like modifications, changes, or,
I don't think we would be entertaining any changes, at least officially.
No, I don't
I
think.
mean, you may conclude that when we get to the hearing, I'm gonna want to see this change, because this doesn't make sense to me, but.
That could be addressed at the hearing. Yeah,
But that's part of that process anyway, right?
right,
It's information, discussion, but no action.
right. What kind of notice does that require to the public?
Public meeting notice.
Public meeting.
But the work session?
Yeah.
yeah.
7 days.
But we wouldn't have to notify, do a citywide mailer with that.
No, it is technically legal, or the
It's
legal
just a
notice would
work
be 24 hours, because it would be just a workshop.
Yeah.
But for city standards, we would have the 7-day notice, the Wednesday before, just like we do.
Right.
And is that just like by your
So March
email?
1st,
Would anybody be, against, like, having that, like, March 6th or 7th, or a little bit
I mean, I
later?
would be fine with that.
in the week?
I'm okay with that as well. At that time, I'm fine.
Like, what time of day?
Just like same time.
But with city council too?
I was just planning a trip to St. Croix. But I can modify that.
so are you not here on that week of the 1st?
The 1st is not good for you.
It's not, but I can change things.
Like March 8th, I mean,
Like March 8th, does that work for everybody, or March, somewhere around the 8th? or-
2 weeks prior.
I have a,
And I have technically a business class scheduled at the exact same time.
What about evening? Is that unreasonable?
Yeah, because if the city council's gonna be there, don't they usually meet in the evening?
City council won't be there,
Oh,
right?
they won't?
Will it be a joint council,
Okay.
planning commission, or will it be just planning commission? I mean, it'd be nice to have council, but I think I think at one point I talked to you, Mike, and you said it probably is not a good idea to have the planning commission and council together.
Yeah, it's a challenge because you have two board structures.
I mean, you've had joint workshops before with the two,
Yeah.
but
It's a little awkward.
But if it's
You
not,
have the chair of planning commission who's in charge of running planning commission side, and chair and mayor of the.
and we really just don't get along at all. And so, but if this is just for kind of discussion and, information gathering, like, does that matter? Like, if it's all just like, let's just learn together so that we're as best
ideally it would be
prepared.
both.
And maybe it's more like round table as opposed to podium style.
I would love that, so.
And what if we did it at the time of their city council meeting instead?
That's the other
So-
thinking.
That would be ideal.
Which would be in February, the third week of February, right?
Mm-hmm, or March, the third week of February. No, it's the second week.
Council meeting?
Am I
Third-
wrong?
third
Third
week.
week, yeah.
Council meeting would be February 15th.
Yeah.
We'd have to do it during the daytime if we were. Or out the week after, which is February 22nd, when we would typically hold a planning commission meeting.
February 15th is fine with me.
February 15th is fine with me.
I could do the afternoon on that one.
Could we do, like, if we did it city council, could we do it instead of the city council meeting and make that a workshop? Is that allowed?
On February 15th,
Mm-hmm.
do a workshop before the city council meeting.
She's saying in lieu of.
No, we have to
We have to have a city council meeting.
Charter, we have to have at least one
City council meeting.
city council meeting.
What if we did a workshop for an hour at 6 and then they have their council meeting at 7?
The council meeting is at 6.
Has to be at 6.
So what we would do
Do
is
it at
do the
5.
workshop at 5, but I think we have a workshop planned for the city council at 5 already on February 15th. So
And what about the March one at 5 o'clock,
March first, March eighth.
March 15th?
An hour enough time?
Something,
I don't think so.
that's
4 o'clock?
She said no.
prior
Yeah, we need
to.
2 hours.
4 o'clock, 2 hour.
So
We have a lot of stuff to go and digest in now, I don't think.
2 hours.
So then maybe 4 o'clock on the 15th of March.
on the 15th.
But what's the council covering in that, 5 o'clock workshop on that day? Or is there something specific that they're addressing?
Council assignment
Um,
and goal setting. Yeah, council assignment and goal setting.
assignments they can't do until the open meeting.
Yeah, they can still go through it though.
They still go, oh, okay, that's what she is.
So they had assignment and goal setting at 5. So we could do hours prior to that and run up against it.
Mm-hmm.
You want to shoot for that, or do you want to go, do about 4 to 5 on the February 15th?
Or what if we did 4 to 6 on March? That would be the council meeting date.
4 to 6,
They're
can they,
having a meeting at 5.
can they do their goal
On
setting after?
February.
Mm.
Can they do goal setting after the council meeting?
At 9?
9? Sure.
Well, no, 'cause
Yeah.
like, you don't have a workshop
They're
in
not
March
here.
though, do you? You don't have a workshop in March, you have a workshop in February.
I haven't looked that far out.
Okay.
I mean, just, we typically reserve the 5 o'clock hour for their goal setting session. It's like, they have things that pop up and they want to work on them or whatever else. So
Push that out though. This is more important.
Maybe you want to talk to Jamie or the council and, tell them we'd like to do a joint session for 2 hours, at some point. And try to find a date that works.
So we have, so dates that could potentially work, February 22nd, March 15th, are kind of our targets, right?
February 2nd is not the
You're not
date.
here. No,
Nope.
sorry, February 15th.
15th?
15th in the daytime, right?
15th during daytime?
Yes.
Well, I don't know, you said that there's a city
3:30.
council,
So 3 to.
oh, if we went
3.
from 3?
3.
Yeah, okay,
3 to 5,
3 to 5, and then they
Yes.
meet, and then marathon for them.
That'd work for me.
okay?
That works for me.
I have an Edgewater meeting at 5 o'clock on the 15th.
Perfect, because you can then bounce out and go there.
You could then, yeah, get there.
Okay, so the 15th, it's 3, 5, or the other council meeting on March 15th. Same, 3 to 5.
People will come open on that.
Either 15th.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, I appreciate the willingness.
And you'd like me to see if the city council can join?
yes, just to make it cohesive. And then maybe more round table style rather than podium.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is that legal? Pending legal review.
Okay, so we have 2 tentative dates, both for the 15th.
Sounds like 15 to 3 might be the player.
Okay.
Like March 15th?
March or April, or, yeah, February or March, depending.
It gives us a little bit of time too, in case something comes up, right?
Right.
Okay, so I'm not sure scope-wise, having the consultants there.
Right.
So,
Do we need them?
I don't think we even
I
need,
think we've got
we can
key.
just chat and, you know, we'll.
questions
take
come up
questions.
and, or we can,
Well, we can kind of collate questions in our minds to address during the,
right.
And then we can send them over to the consultant, so it'll just be.
pair them.
Yeah. For the most part, we'll take your questions and we'll try to make sure you have an answer. Right.
That's reasonable.
Sounds good.
I think February 15th would be my preference,
Preferred.
just because then it gives us time to digest in between. And get answers to that. But March 15th might be really tight considering the turnaround time.
But, you know, at the same time, we are not obligated to provide them any time to answer questions either, right? Like, even if we have it March 15th, because that's easier for everybody. Like, we wouldn't have this at all and be presenting them with questions in advance regardless. So, I think, see what the,
Be more of a what comes out of the meeting. Right?
yeah. So ideally to 15th, if the city council is willing.
What day is, what day of the week is the 15th of February?
They're both Wednesdays.
Wednesday, and then
Mhm.
March 15th is,
Also,
Wednesdays.
Okay.
Mhm. 3 p.m., 5 p.m. Perfect, okay.
3 p.m.
Correct. Okay. Is there any other staff reports?
we, did the regional transportation plan, submittal, we're still trying to balance the numbers, our projections versus Washington County projections. I think we're down to about a $8 million difference in what we're projecting versus what Washington County is projecting that we'll have over the first 5 years of development out in Kingston Terrace, versus they're taking a more conservative approach with the numbers that we're projecting. I'm trying to project what the MLG property would equate to, as well as, the property adjacent to theirs on the other side of Elsner, and what kind of infrastructure is gonna be necessary for that. And I see Deep Bend, Roy Rogers, Elsner, River Terrace Boulevard, and the Kingston, / Fisher extension coming from Roy Rogers to Elsner at least. And potentially, if the parcel to the other side of Elsner goes, then you have at least two where 154th would come down. Those 5 projects are probably like $50 million, $60 million. And our figures with those fully developed are somewhere in the 30 to 40 million. So there's a, differential there that we need to, compute and figure out where the balancing act is. So,
Which one's the MLG property? You mentioned MLG, but I'm not familiar.
yeah, Metropolitan Land Group has the holdings of the Hossawiki family and Alice Farm and Garden. So it's about 150 acres, I believe, on that side. So from Elsner to Roy Rogers, then to, there's a wetland area, like a flood area down there on the south side of their property.
Has it been delineated, the floodplain?
They've delineated the wetlands on their property itself.
So they have,
There's another piece in there that they're thinking could potentially be like a stormwater facility or a fall feature. When I'm looking at what they're proposing in that area, there's a number of units on there, and I'm taking that number and multiplying it by what our system development charge is estimated at, and what Washington County's transportation development tax is estimated at, trying to figure out how much that's going to generate. And then there's the property to the other side of Elsner.
To the
Allen property, which has expressed interest to go, to the west. Oh, yeah, east of Elsner, the O'Halloran property there, which I think is about 40 acres of developable land. So if we use a number of like 10 per acre being our baseline minimum, and upwards to 20 being the requirement for House Bill 2001, 2003, big number, there's a big difference there. So
I thought it was already 20 dwelling units per acre,
that's what House Bill 2001, 2003 requires.
but it's not passed yet.
It is passed.
It is passed, so we are requiring 20.
We're not requiring, we're allowing that much.
Allowing 20, okay.
Well, we have to plan for 20 units per acre. So in all of our infrastructure planning, we're required to plan for 20 units per acre. We could see more. We could see less. So, I mean, the thing that House Bill 2001, 2003 does is it takes a single family lot and allows duplex, triplex, and quadplexes on that single family lot. You could have 4 units per lot, or you could have 1.
So how do you meet Metro's requirement of 3,300 to 3,600 when you have that,
That's pretty easy, because that's our minimum, right? So that's the 10 unit per acre minimum that we have.
okay, that's based on 10?
Yeah.
Okay, right.
So our thought is that we should exceed that, well exceed the 3,300 minimum that Metro put on.
In terms of planning infrastructure?
Just with our land use models. Our land use models are predicting a minimum of 3574, 3575. 33.
But all your traffic modeling and whatnot's based on the 3,300 to 3,600, right?
3,600, yeah, and then also I think a lot of the DKS model nodes consider the growth up the hill, and all that expand out through 2040.
I got a ruling from Steve Faust on that, and he said that those numbers are not included, River Terrace 2.0 is not included in any of the data for...
The DKS data? All right.
And River Terrace 2.0 on the south side is 200 acres, and they're estimating 3,000 to 4,500 homes between the south and the west, the two portions.
And then there's Cooper Mountain and Tile Flat.
And then you've got all that other south side of Bull Mountain traffic. So, you know, when I went to testify at Metro here, it was terrible oral testimony, but I provided written testimony concerning the concerns regarding the alignment of north-south collectors coming out of River Terrace 2.0 into Kingston Terrace, because I know the two cities are working together for connectivity. However, when you've got all this north-south traffic coming into Kingston Terrace, the concern then is they use an east-west collector to get over to 99W at Fisher. So all of the modeling for intersection data and average daily traffic volumes don't include any of that additional traffic. And you're talking about 11,000 homes between River Terrace 1, 2, and Kingston Terrace. That's 11,000 homes in a very small geographic area, and that was the point I was trying to make, is a lot of potential outside traffic. And personally, I'm not against 3,300 homes or 3,600 homes in Kingston Terrace and intra-city traffic. But what I am concerned about is Kingston Terrace becoming a regional transportation corridor for cut-through traffic and alleviating River Terrace 2.0, the burden of, already Washington County has said, we want Kingston Terrace to do an alternative east-west roadway, right? Because we want the burden to be off of East Bend Road. But now River Terrace 2.0 on February 2nd is probably going to get voted in the UGB, 99.9% chance of that happening. And then all of a sudden, you're introducing this regional type of traffic dynamic. So I think this is part of what we need to talk about, at this roundtable coming up, is these concerns. And, you know, KCCA, you know, not really too worried about it because they're somewhat isolated, right?
Right.
But I think for the, future community of Kingston Terrace, I think we really need to think about impacts. You know, not just for what's happening to me, in my particular situation, but the community at large. And I think it's really worth sitting down and talking about.
I know it's a dirty word around here, but the west side bypass is,
Well, it's happening, right?
you know,
Yeah.
I know it's not like being planned, but
It happened.
Roy Rogers is kind of acting like
That is
that
it.
west side bypass.
It's in the same corridor. And so everybody was against the west side bypass back then, and it happened, right? And so, you know, and the worry back then for west side bypass was explosionary growth, like you're seeing in Happy Valley and other places, is that you put in a big road, and then the next thing comes is the development. So, you know, there's no real escaping it. There's a lot of things to consider, and I think that as we go through this process of master planning and TSP, we're coming up to the final stages of this thing, is that I think we need to, you know, really sit down and think about what do we want for our community and what the impacts are gonna be, and how can we mitigate some of those potential negative impacts in the future, so.
I'll ask DKS about their modeling projections, because my understanding was that they were taking that growth into consideration, but I don't know the modeling data that, SCGA used. I thought they used DKS model numbers, to do their projections. And I know that they were focused primarily on Kingston Terrace, but I'll ask Carl Springer at DKS about their projections, because I know they were working with Washington County on the Washington County update to their TSP, for the county transportation system. And I thought they were using their modeling numbers that Washington County was using when they were doing our projections.
Apparently not. I mean, that's the answer I got. And then, you know, you consider there's still nothing planned to the west side of Roy Rogers Road. So what's gonna happen out there? And where are the opportunities to get to 99W? Bull Mountain Road, Beef Bend Road, Kingston Terrace Road, and that's it until you get the 99W clear in Sherwood, or you take Shoals Ferry some roundabout way. So there's a lot to really consider as far as what we do in our community and what that's gonna look like in the future.
True.
There's limited choices.
I talked to Jessica Peltz last week from Washington County, and she mentioned to me, she said they're taking 2018 costing. She was told just recently, like in the last few weeks, had 40%.
For the RT, that's
Yeah,
what we did.
and I know some of your costing is 2018, at least I think it is. You know, from a economical standpoint, I know you got the economist that's on board now. And when you start establishing SDC charges, you can pay yourself into a corner.
Yeah.
It's crazy how expensive it really is. And I know that, our numbers are pretty padded right now. We're on the hefty side for some of what we're planning. But I think that's better than being on the other side where we would have shortages. So, but Todd Chase at FTS is looking over those numbers, and we're trying to compute them for the 2023 estimates. We got pretty good ideas on what those are. But yeah, we did multiply them considerably based on the county for 2023 conversion numbers. But yeah, where those numbers go in the future,
Anybody's guess,
inflation
right?
stays where it is.
Any other commentary regarding these projects, or does the staff any other additional upcoming projects to report on?
I think so,
Do you have any updates on 131st and Fisher and that?
Oh, yeah, there were some questions about why it's kind of quieted down, right? So, they are waiting, my understanding is waiting on the PGE vault and the installation of the power lines through the vault. So, PGE is supposed to provide them with, design engineering for 2 power vaults. One is going to be on the north side of the property there, near the apartment complex that's there. That'll take the power down from the pole into that vault, and then go to another vault that's located south of their entrance, and from there, junction across the way to Fisher Road, and then go back up on the power line.
Are they removing those power lines that are along 131st?
Those will go underground.
So it's interesting that they'll stop construction, huh?
Well, they have to wait for the PG.
They can't get temporary power to start hammering and,
Well, PG has to come out and run the power to the vault. So I think that's what they're waiting on right now, and they got pretty close to final, my understanding. So, they have, there was a piece, a strip of land that was holding them up, that was owned, by Legend Homes, that was dedicated to public use. And that was a, 30-foot strip of land along the south side of their property, along Fisher. We talked with Legend Homes, and they quitclaimed it to the city. The city just declared it, right away. So that will get recorded as on a plat. I think that was the last thing holding up their plat besides the utility vault in the 2 locations, and that's just a PGE timing thing. Imagine they'll get going once that.
That'll just be for the residential portion, so
Yeah.
the commercial portion, they would have to come in with a site plan review that would go before the commission. Get it started on that.
Do we have any commissioners' reports? At this time, I'm going to call for a motion to adjourn the planning commission meeting. May I get a motion?
motion to adjourn.
Second.
Discussion? We need a roll call to adjourn. Mike? We just adjourn? Okay, all right, then I am going to adjourn this meeting at 11:14.